So, my friends, we're here in front of the historic Breed Street Shul here in Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles. And why are we here today? Well, because we love this site and we're always coming by to check on it. But also, I'm here today to say a little prayer and keep in mind for blessing the people of Ukraine. And why am I doing so here in front of this glorious building? What would this building have to do with the people of Ukraine? If you know about the history of Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles, you might recall that the first half of the 20th century, this is the largest Jewish community west of the Mississippi, west of Chicago. And often when people talk about this neighborhood, they talk about it being a Russian Jewish community. And indeed, we had a lot of Russian people, a lot of people who came from Russia here, Jewish and otherwise. But what is often left out is the story, the rich story of Ukrainians, and specifically Ukrainian Jewish people, and the role that they play and that some of their leaders played in making this such a vibrant Jewish community. Indeed, in this building here, which was the largest synagogue west of Chicago, the rabbi, whoever was there, was always considered the chief rabbi, the chief Orthodox rabbi of Los Angeles. Well, the rabbi who served there from 1935 up until 1974, when he passed away at 83 years old after serving almost 40 years in service here, he was actually a gadol. He was a great rabbi who had come to California by way of Winnipeg, Canada, but had previously served for several years as the chief rabbi of Kiev. And so what happens is that when he became the rabbi here and the chief rabbi of Los Angeles, this was really not just a very Orthodox place that a lot of Eastern Europeans wanted to flock to, but it was a very special and familiar place for people from the Ukraine. And it is important to note, though, that Rabbi Osher Zilberstein, that he was actually born in Russia. He was born in the famous town of Mezrich, and became rabbi at 17 years old. And but he ascended to being the chief rabbi of Kiev, and so that's rather important to note. But that's just one person that kind of represents a heritage, on both sides of the border, both in Russia and also in Ukraine. And still to this day, a lot of our families that have migrated to East Los Angeles, especially since the late 80s, 1990s, a lot of them also come from the Ukraine with family members that are in Russia. And so we're also having in mind all of those families that are, really feel like they have the other side of their family kind of held hostage right now. So we pray for the peace of the people of Ukraine. But you know what? We're going to go through a walk to the neighborhood just for me to demonstrate to you that, some of the most famous people that I talk about are actually people of Ukrainian, on Jewish backgrounds. So let's go walking and we'll say goodbye to the Breed Street Shul. May she be blessed and may we should see her reopened soon in our days. And so now we're going to cross down the street, and I'm just going to point out some of my personal heroes and some of the folk heroes of the neighborhood that are of Ukrainian Jewish tradition. Are you ready to go? And after this, we're actually going to be learning a little bit about Ukrainian Jewish food, which we are making for our Shabbat celebration today. So let's get going. Let's get walking. We will build up an appetite for some fledglings challah, which is a unique Ukrainian Jewish treat that we're making to keep the people on the plight of the Ukrainian people before our eyes and to hope the best for them. Okay, let's get walking. Now, some of our Ukrainian Jewish notables of the neighborhood, some were heroes and some were notorious, like the guy who grew up here. In this duplex here grew up the famous Jewish mobster, Mickey Cohen. Yeah, the Al Capone of Los Angeles and the West Coast grew up here. And rather wild character, as a small kid, already learning the hustling business and getting into boxing. And that's what got him into the crime underworld. What else goes with boxing other than gambling and stuff like that? And so naturally he was sent back in order to be a very charismatic and a very forceful collector for the mobs, and setting up all kinds of rackets around here in order for people to be able to do gambling in numbers games and casinos that were set up all throughout the neighborhood. And what's interesting to note is that Mickey Cohen, both of his parents actually had immigrated to the United States from Ukraine, specifically from Kiev. Now, also, you'll notice that across the street from where our museum is, there is a pharmacy, the St. Louis Pharmacy. And I'm told that at one time his family actually ran that pharmacy, that at 7.5, Mickey Cohen was already bootlegging gin. And so we can only imagine that's how, he started making himself notorious through this community. Like I said, not everyone was a hero, but many of these characters were quite notorious, and at least worth mentioning. Now, one of the things that the Jewish immigrants who came from Eastern Europe, from the area of the influence of the former Soviet Union, are often credited with is really starting the foundations for the movements that would lead to fighting directly for immigrants and for working class people's rights. And one of my biggest heroes that I look up to is Rose Posada. Rose Posada right here is really important because she was the one who in the early 1930s led one of the first successful strikes in the garment industry, which led to thousands of women of color, specifically Mexican American women, for the first time being allowed into the unions in order to fight for their labor rights, for their safety, and for fair work practices and for fair labor. And so this is Rose Posada right here. She came from Ukraine and came with just this amazing radical spirit. And this stanchion is actually right in front of our neighborhood City Hall, the CD14 City Hall building here in Boyle Heights on 4th Street. But I can actually show you where she used to organize from, where her main workplace for organizing. Let's go see it. And here it is, the place where Rose Posada and many other Ukrainian Jewish labor organizers and civil rights activists organized for the first time here at what was known as the Vladik Center, named after Baruch Charny Vladik, who was the founder of the Jewish Labor Committee, an anti-fascist organization that also fought for labor causes, not just in Europe during the rise of Nazis, but here in this country. This was also an organizing place for the International Lady Garment Workers Union. And so that's where Rose Posada comes in. She was previously blacklisted as from being able to work in most of the garment shops because she had tried organizing them before. And so she went back to New York, and in New York, they wondered why in Los Angeles the labor unions were not really taking off. And she knew the reason why is because Latinas, who made up 80% of the seamstresses, were not being allowed into the unions. Indeed, many women were not even allowed control in the unions, as many of the union jobs are mostly given to white males. And indeed, the entire control of the union in Los Angeles was white males. There was no even female representation in the International Lady Garment Workers Union. She comes out in 1933 and she organizes what they said was an impossible feat, that Mexican Americans were impossible to organize. What she starts doing is what most Jewish people do: try to find a language that they can speak. And what happens is that she started, along with Jewish people, holding meetings in Spanish. And in time, they were able to get so many more people into the union that they were able to make the International Lady Garment Workers Union viable with all of the new vibrancy of bringing in thousands of members. In 1 month, she brought in over 7,000 women into the International Lady Garment Workers, making it sustainable. And within a couple years, there were whole Spanish-speaking chapters of the International Lady Garment Workers Union. But we have to thank this very interesting, political anarchist, labor organizer, not just a socialist, an anarchist, or libertarian, as they called themselves at the time, and who organized here from this place and how it changed everything. So it wasn't just Jewish religion that really, was infused into this community and helped make the spirit of the community. It was also this really radical, revolutionary spirit of these people who came from the former Soviet Union, who faced injustices as well there and hoped in this land that they could actually address some of those issues. And in many cases, they were able to. And from this neighborhood, they were able to teach the rest of the country and the world so much more. And so hopefully soon, this little corner right here, this area and what is left of just the facade of the old building is going to be designated Levitt Square after Julius Levitt, who was one of the organizers here with the Jewish Daily Forward and was a well-known Jewish leftist organizer that we want to recognize here in the community. And so hopefully we will be getting this area here designated Julius Levitt Square so that we can let people know that there are still some of these tangible remnants of some of these organizing places, even if we just have only small pieces of them, like this piece that is near the back end of LAPD station, but is conveniently just about half a block from where our museum and cultural center, where Boyle Heights History Studios is, and where the Boyle Heights Chavurah, the Grassroots Jewish Fellowship of East Los Angeles, of which I am very proud to represent and to lead services for our grassroots community here. But I'm very, very proud that we don't just talk about history. We are keeping culture alive. And how we keep culture alive is we are continuously passing down not just the stories, not just the sayings, not just history of what used to be, but what we're doing is we're teaching people how to actually take in hand the social history. We're teaching them how to take their faith cultures in hand. We're teaching them as well even how to keep the flavors of our local recipes that are so important, and that once you would just, on an afternoon like this, right before Shabbat, you would smell coming out from just about every window in this area when this was a densely populated Jewish community. But I have to tell you, some people think all those flavors are gone. They're not all gone. Some of them are still alive here in our community. And they're right here at First and St. Louis, where we're always looking for an opportunity in order to break bread, in order to share our culture. So you want to come in and learn a little bit about how to make Shabbat, challah challah that you could use for Shabbat or for the high holidays. We're making it for Shabbat in honor of the Ukrainian Jewish community. So come with us across the streets. We will bring you into our museum and cultural center, and we will get our hands busy in some dough. But throughout the next few weeks, we're going to be sharing a lot of different recipes that are both shared by the Ukrainian and the Russian Jewish communities, which were both very influential in the area. And indeed, some recipes that are even shared by Sephardic Jews, by Spanish Middle Eastern Jews, such as myself. So come on into our museum and let's get our hands in the dough and let's do some baking and let's share about culture, about faith, through food. So come on in, my friends. So here at Boyle Heights History Studios, one of the things that we do is we don't just teach about the history of Boyle Heights, but we teach about the cultures of Boyle Heights that have contributed to making this such a vibrant, such an important community. That people from all the world come to visit and come to study about the amazing multicultural history that took place here, mostly in the first half of the 20th century, as this was a destination for many, many immigrants, especially from Central and Eastern Europe. And oftentimes within the history, we talk about the Russian history of the area, but one of the things that people often forget about is that a lot of the people that get lumped into being the Russian Jews of East Los Angeles, there's generally a lot of people that are miscategorized because they are Ukrainian, and we often think of those who come from the former Soviet Union as all kind of being Russians. However, it is important for us to recognize that there was a major influence of Ukrainian Jewish tradition here in this neighborhood. And before World War II, it's important to note that Ukraine was the largest Jewish community in the world prior to the Holocaust, and still today is one of the largest Jewish centers in the world. In fact, they have the largest Jewish community center in the world. Yeah, that's right. Not in America, not in Israel, but in Ukraine, Chabad actually has the world's largest Jewish community center. That's how really important, the Ukrainian Jewish community is, and why so many people are aching as there's so much of this just terrible warfare that's going on against the people of Ukraine. And in this community, we've been standing in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. And one of the ways that we've been doing that is by focusing on some of the recipes of the Ukrainian Jewish community. And one of the ways that we've been doing that is making these little guys, the fegelach challah. And so that's what I'm going to be teaching us how to make today, is the fegelach challah. And what are fegelach? Well, fegelach are birdies in Yiddish. And what you see here is that these little birds here are actually challah dough. We make challah for every Shabbat. It's common to Central and Eastern European Jews, especially Ashkenazi Jews, to make egg dough brioche, which normally we braid into different types of braids in order to make it really festive. However, at different times of the year, there can be different types of shapes that take center stage at our table, and bread is always what takes center stage within a Jewish meal. And so throughout the year, you'll often find it in different shapes. Especially around the Jewish New Year, it's often made round. And however, there is a very unique tradition of making a very decorative round challah bread for the Jewish New Year that is unique to the Ukrainian Jewish community, and which is kind of spread out from there to other Jewish communities who have fallen in love with this tradition. And that is for them to, when they are making their round challah for the New Year, for the Jewish New Year, for Rosh HaShana, which normally comes in the fall, that they make these round challah in the shape of birds. And why do they do so? Well, they do so with this beautiful thought in mind. They do so with this beautiful verse from the Bible, which says, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 31, verse 5, "As birds hover over their fledglings, so will the Lord of hosts protect Jerusalem. He will deliver it as he protects it. He will rescue it as he passes over." And so what happens is that it's just a beautiful thought that people would have in mind, that birds would be this beautiful symbolism of being protected and also of freedom. and that people would go into the year and into the festive meal of the new year with those beautiful thoughts in mind. And so, but however, in Yiddish, what it refers to this is, generally people, for the word of birds, they use the word fegelak, or, fledgling, is from where it's drawn from. And so what I'm going to do is show you just very simply how you can make these very simple, lovely, lovely treats. Since we want to extend peace onto the people of Ukraine at this time of year, we know that desperately they need it. We're not going to be waiting until fall in order to be making these treats. We're going to be making them continuously and hoping as we go into Shabbat that there is a Shabbat of rest and peace also for all the people of Ukraine. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this challah dough, which is just a basic egg brioche, dough without any type of dairy in it. We use oil instead of butter. But what we're going to do is that this is about 1 pound of challah dough. So what we're going to do is that we're going to divide it. And what we need to do is we need to roll out this dough. And so we're going to make about, for the single birds, you want to roll out about 8 inches of dough into a traditional rope formation, just like you're making regular challah bread. And as we roll, of course, we roll from the center outwards. And once we've gotten it at least 8 inches in size, what we do is we make a knot. We make a knot in it. And what we do is that we bring out one side, that's going to be a tail, and another side that we're going to form into the head of a bird. So that's what we're going to start with. Here in the front is that we're going to start shaping a little point for a beak, and start shaping a little head and a ridge line for the top of the bird's head. And as we form it, we're also going to make a nice little indentation here where we're going to put some eyes. And I actually have here little pieces of raisin that we can stick in there. And we just try to form a nice little pointed beak here. And sometimes, people also like to use, pepitas in place. And of having to form a very sharp beak. Sometimes it's cute to put a pepita there, so a pumpkin seed. And so also what we need to do in order to make our tail from here, since we made our head, what we're going to do is this back area, we're just going to make an indentation on it with the fork. And we're just going to take a sharp knife. We're going to separate those. I'm going to make another little one since it's so thick through there. And maybe just another one yet. And here we have our bird. And we're just going to lay it on our parchment paper because we are going to be baking that. And so now I'm going to show you how to make the double. And to make the double, you might want to just make it a little bit longer. longer. But again, you roll out ropes, and you're really rolling from the center out. And of course, I'm rolling on a festive tablecloth right now. And so it's wanting to move a little bit more than normal. Okay, but what we want to do here is that as we are making our double, our lovebirds, we're going to want to have two lovebirds side by side. What we do is we make a horseshoe shape, and then we bring the dough through, and then we nicely tuck it all together. As we're doing that, what we're doing is we're bringing the other sides out, of course, through here, that are going to be the tails. But first, I always like to work with the head and make sure that we get nice and beautiful shaped beaks of two distinct lovebirds that are going to be side by side. These are looking so nice that I won't even use any pepitas. They have nice little beaks already coming together. So I'm going to put some eyes right there with our raisins. Now, again, we want to work with the tails, so we get, just as a guide, our fork, and we press down in order to and then what we do is that we use a sharp knife. It's easier if I turn it around this way in order to help separate that. And I'm gonna make this one just a little bit nicer. There we go. Making just a few more. So there we have our single birds and our lovebirds. So we're gonna let them rise just for a little bit. Since we're using instant yeast and everything, we just really need to let these rise as little as 10 minutes to about an hour. You can let them rise. And but before we put them in the oven, one of the important things that we really need to do with these is we want to make sure that we are going to cover them with a little bit of an egg wash, and that is going to give them a nice glorious shine. Let me grab that. So we just want to go very gently, and we really want to do it at this point because they're going to be too soft to be able to add this egg wash later on. And you want to put it on all the surfaces, making sure to turn them around so that you can get it on every surface so that it's golden brown on each and every side. But you don't want to put it on so thick that it's going to scramble like an omelet over it. And after we put an egg wash on these, and they've risen just a little bit more, what we're going to do is that we're going to put them into the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes until they have a wonderful golden brown to them. And to make sure that you don't miss any sides in doing the egg wash, you really do want to make sure to turn them around so you can see every area and reach every area. Now I'm going to put these in the oven right now. I'm going to show you two that just came out. And these are two that are fresh from the oven. And as you see, we have two lovebirds. And now this one I let proof really, really long, so it's much bigger than the ones that we've been making lately. But these are fresh. This is fresh right now for Shabbat. And again, I let them proof a little bit bigger so you can see that we have a much larger little birdie here. But if you want them to keep their shape, of course, and you want them to keep the details that you're carving into them and all of that, of course, you just bake them sooner. You don't overproof them. But since we're actually going to be eating these, we wanted these to be as fluffy as possible. And but you know what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks is sharing all kinds of different recipes that are shared both by Ukrainian and by Russian Jewish communities. A lot of our friends and family members that are members of the Boyle Heights Kavira, the grassroots Jewish fellowship that meets here, have families that are on both sides of the border. And so we're going to share some recipes that are shared by both communities. Interestingly, one of the things that they really both love to do is create poppy breads and stuff like that. So we're going to be sharing some of that. And interestingly, there is a Sephardic Jewish, a Spanish Jewish recipe for making poppy breads and stuff like this. And so we're going to be teaching that as well. But over the next weeks, in order for people to be able to learn and to be able to keep up with a lot of the recipes, what we're going to be doing throughout the next couple weeks is teaching how to make a basic challah and how to do basic braided, Ashkenazi style Jewish bread that is common for the Shabbat table, for the Sabbath day. And we're also going to be teaching how to make, what they call water challah here, but generally, if in Israel and Europe, they call it Hasidic challah, because it generally is something that is becoming more popular here in Los Angeles because there are so many vegans out there. It is egg-free and it's absolutely delicious. So I'm going to be teaching people how to make both egg challah and how to make the Hasidic vegan challah, so that you can use those interchangeably throughout a lot of the recipes that we are going to be learning together throughout the next few weeks and the next few months. But I want us to keep the people of Ukraine in mind, and to pray for the peace of the people of Ukraine and also for the peace of the people of Russia as well. That there's so many people in Russia that are standing up against this as well. And our hearts go out to everyone and all the families that are just caught in the trauma of all of this right now. But we hope that from our tables, we can keep them in mind by placing some symbols that will remind us of the Ukrainian Jewish community, and hopefully from our tables, our prayers will rise up like birds and will go to protect the people of Ukraine. And I want to thank everyone who's been supporting the work that we do here at the Boyle Heights History Studios, a museum and cultural center, and who've been coming out for Shabbat and for the Jewish holidays to break bread with us. That's how people come together, is by breaking bread. And that's one of our big initiatives that we're going into the next few months, is doubling up on breaking bread with people of the community. And but I hope that you continue to remember these recipes, pass them down, especially during this time as we're trying to keep in mind for peace the people of Ukraine. Also, since we're going into the Passover season, I want you to know that already in the Jewish community, people are thinking of what type of symbolism can be placed onto a Seder plate that will represent the people of Ukraine, that we stand in solidarity and we hope for the peace of the people of Ukraine. And what has been going around is the idea of placing an olive. Since we can't place the full olive branch on the Seder table for Passover, symbolically what people are going to be doing this year is placing an olive, hoping that it will represent peace for the people of Ukraine, and that we will continue even through the joy of Passover, to continue to have before us the remembrance of just how much the people of Ukraine are suffering, and also just the amazing spirit that they're showing us at this time. And so thank you for joining us, and support the work that we're doing right now. Our GoFundMe is out there. Want to thank everyone who has been contributing towards that, and we're just overjoyed that we're still here doing the basic work of bringing people together in this community, and not just teaching about history, but keeping traditions alive for another generation. So I want to wish all of you out there a Shabbat Shalom. Be well.